conversation. Brent, thank you for coming on. DHS Secretary Mayorkas says the feds have limited authority to shoot down the drones. If that's the case, then who does have that authority?
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me on the show. I mean, this is not a new issue. It goes back to several years before legislation in 2018 gave all the authorities that the states and federal authorities needed to address this issue that we're seeing today. So totally avoidable, not a question of authorities. And then you have billions of dollars in defense that have been spent over that same period, and also for Homeland Security to put in place the type of sensors and countermeasures for this type of threat. It's really a question of leadership in my mind.
So, Brent, can you expand a little bit on that as to exactly how this is avoidable?
Yes. Well, the first thing is once this new series of drones, there were a bunch of smaller ones that is one type of category, and you've had a history of Chinese agents operating in the United States. One was arrested last week, Monday, for operating a small drone at Vandenberg Air Force Base. There were two other incidents in this year, one in South Korea, filming U.S. warships, again, Chinese nationals. And then in January of this year, there was another Chinese national as a student at University of Minnesota that was using a drone to spy on naval facilities in Norfolk, Virginia. That's one category of activities that they should have been long before these sightings in New Jersey. Now, there are some that appear to be the same type of small drones, could be operated again like we've seen 3 times already this year by Chinese efforts at espionage, but it could also be Russians, and it could also be Iran that does have a death or hit on President Trump issue. Now, the other class of drones that we really have got very little information on are the so-called SUV-sized ones, industrial or military drones. If those are operated by a U.S. entity, we should know a lot more than the federal government or the states are able to tell us. But if it's something else, then that's a very troubling development and also new. And this is, again, this most recent series of events goes back to November.
Well, now, yes, Brent, we've been dealing with this for several weeks. Let's go back to Vandenberg Air Force Base. When that drone was flying over that restricted airspace, DHS Secretary Mayorkas said that they acted swiftly and they brought charges against that person, but they're not necessarily doing those same kind of actions here. Is that because these drones are not flying directly into restricted airspace, but that they're just flying near these sensitive areas in New Jersey and others, such as military installations?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. I go back to the number one thing that's missing in all this, because the New Jersey drone sightings go back to about a month now. It really is lacking in leadership. The difference is, in the Vandenberg Air Force Base, you have a highly sensitive but also somewhat isolated area, so it's easy. It's also known to be a threat for espionage, and so the military and intelligence agencies were probably positioned and pre-triggered to look out for something like this. Not a question of authorities at all, and certainly crossing over federal into state lands, and also interagency, with FBI making the arrest. So the difference is leadership and also positioning of adequate resources in an area that should have been better prepared with sensitive sites, and also with Bedminster nearby, a future president's residence and golf course where there's known to be a threat on his life.
Those are all very good points that you make, Brent. Representative Jim Himes of Connecticut says that the government's answer of "we don't know" is just not good enough. And he says, well, because he was on the Intel committee, what he says is that the Iranians and Chinese, what they don't do is send over drones over the continental United States that can be easily apprehended and then taken apart because they learned their lesson with the spy balloon. Now, you're free to comment on that if you want, or just whether or not these should be shot down, or at least have one of them captured like New Jersey Congressman Chris Smith is calling for.
Well, the first thing on this to caution is not for the public to be taking shots at this, certainly over populated areas, because if you're a citizen in doing that, one, you could misidentify and be shooting at a manned aircraft that's perfectly innocent. And now you're into a very serious litigation in court and potentially criminal investigation. So the last thing we want is citizens taking action in their own hands unless it's an imminent threat on their property and lower than 400 feet, for one. There's another dividing line for actions where authorities lie. So what needs to be done is there's RF energy methods of taking these out. Again, it comes with risk in a populated area to take control of the drones. used in the war space by the U.S. Again, one of those capabilities invested in. The other is to jam it, cause the drone to crash. Again, that comes with some risk. One of the final options in the last resort should be shooting it out of the sky. Again, if it is a risk. But it begs the question, if these large drones are making their way into the United States from, as some are asserting, from a mothership offshore, go to the source instead and prevent it from even launching the drones in the first place.
Well, Brent, we appreciate your commentary this morning. Brent Sadler, former Pentagon official and research fellow for naval warfare at the Heritage Foundation.
Thank you very much.